into here.
I was a dumb kid. I did a lot of ridiculous shit, but this encounter? Just let me tell you, I learned my lesson about breaking into places that really should be left alone. It was in the middle of the summer. Me and my friends sat on a wooden fence smoking cigarettes, thinking about what the hell to do with ourselves. One of my friends suggested an abandoned hospital up the road from my house. We were unsure at first, as we'd heard a lot of stories from people who had previously went years ago, before it was boarded up again. After much discussion we went. It was boarded up with wood nailed to the windows. The doors were sealed shut, so there was no way we could have gotten in that way. We were going to walk away and just go home, but luckily I remembered I had something at home that I could get the boards off with. As we climbed through the window, we finally got in. It was like going through a time warp. The place wasn't heavily damaged, and the interior looked like it was from the 70s or 60s. There were still stale bloody towels there too. It was eerie as hell. Anyways, we fooled around and freaked each other out for a few hours until we had to go. Before we left, we messed around with the fire extinguisher that had been left there. While everyone was in the center of the hospital, I stepped out for a breather in the hallway, with the window we entered through. I was at the bottom of the hallway and I saw a pale, slender figure in a blue hospital gown climb out the window while looking at me. He looked tired and sick. I froze and screamed. I left as soon as it appeared. I will never forget how freaky it was. My friend and I had decided one summer night to go to this place called the Slaughterhouse one evening. Where I grew up, there was a lot of urban legends about this place, and the road it was on, Empire Mine Road. This road was located in the Bay Area of California, and the road was shut down after many accidents had happened, and it was deemed unsafe, although it was still open as a walkable trail. Well, we had decided to go alone. I know, 2 youngish girls at night at an abandoned place. Not the smartest idea. In the past, we had gone in a group of 4 or 5 people and always found other explorers there, so we didn't think much of it, and we felt pretty safe. I had brought a film camera with me, hoping to capture something possibly otherworldly on film to serve as evidence. I also brought my pocket knife just in case there was a need and for peace of mind, because homeless sometimes hung out there, and there were always rumors of satanic rituals, although I knew the ritual rumor was most likely BS. We started the 20-minute walk to the slaughterhouse, and this time we felt really different. About a minute or 2 into the walk, I felt heavy with dread and fear. But I didn't want to say anything and creep out my friend, or seem like I was chickening out. We made it up the final turn to a straightaway, where it sounded like we were next to a freeway. But at this point, we were at least a mile off from the nearest road. The loud sounds of cars and car doors closing was supposedly the remains of all the accidents that happened along that road, but I wasn't so sure. I just figured sounds were carried with the wind from the faraway freeways and roads. We made it down the final stretch, and we hopped the fence, and we were on the property. The place was very different from the last time. It looked as if it had burned, and the buildings were blocked off by rubble, so there really wasn't much to do. I walked to buildings I had photographed at a previous visit for comparison, and began joking to my friend as I started feeling a bit more comfortable. I don't remember what I was exactly doing, but I turned my back on the building. My friend stared at me, and dead seriously was like, "Come here now." And I walked over, like, "What's the matter?" Apparently she had seen a dark figure with red eyes behind me. I didn't personally see it, so I don't know if that was to scare me or not. But as I stepped towards her, I saw a dark truck traveling the road we had just walked on. This was really weird because the road was gated off and we parked in front of the gate, which meant no one could come through without moving our car. I can't stress this enough. It would have been nearly impossible for a car to get through past our car and the locked gate. The truck was dark and barely visible with no lights on it, and it didn't make any sound like the road or engine noise. This dark truck pulled up to the gate we had hopped, and we heard yelling to "Get off my property!" We couldn't see anyone in the truck and it was barely lit up. As soon as it was there, it was gone and with no sound. Neither of us saw a gun, but we both swore he had one. I was like, "Let's get out before whoever or whatever comes back." I nearly ran the mile back, and I'm not someone to run. Once we hit the final stretch, I could see what looked like police lights. We told each other to just remain calm and we'd be fine. Once we got there, the police greeted us politely, and we returned the politeness, hoping to score points. They had said that they received a jumbled up call that was very odd, but what they caught was there were people on the road. They seemed to be as confused by the call as we were. My friend had said, "We were just walking the road to see the place at night and never actually hopped the fence." And thank God, they believed us. After a few insulting remarks of us being two females on a road at night, we were on our way. We stopped at a well-lit gas station to catch our breath and agreed never again. I no longer lived near this area, but after that I swore I'd never go back, certainly not at night. I still think about this night and it perplexes me every time that happened. I told myself that it was just the owner, but it just doesn't make sense how they could have gotten through our car and the gate, and the confusion the police had as well. In addition, many of the photos I took turned up as pitch black, even though I had flashlights and flash on. I had a few developed, and they looked normal, but I chalked it off to be bad film. The same thing happened with the pictures I took on my phone as well. Overall, this experience has puzzled me. My girlfriend and I often get bored with our hometown, so we travel our state a lot exploring abandoned places. Some of these places are also deemed to be haunted. I'm browsing on my computer one day and I find this prison, located about 3 hours from our town. We decide to drive out there on the upcoming 4th of July because we figured no one would be there for the holiday. This prison was very large, with 10 or so buildings, ranging from cell blocks to indoor workout areas. All of these buildings were surrounded by guard towers and fencing that was impossible to enter without breaking the chain links. We parked behind these trees in the front parking lot and walk up to the main building entrance used for prisoner intake. Lucky for us, the front door simply opened and we could walk right in. We passed through that building and here we are now, inside the prison itself. It's a very open space with sidewalks and courtyards connecting the buildings. However, there were little things that seemed off about the whole place. Dead crows that lined the sidewalks were the most noticeable. It was like they flew over the prison and just fell out of the sky. Even the graffiti was made up of weird symbols that we didn't understand. We passed all that, a little on edge now, and as we walked, I saw letters on the buildings. A, B, C were regular cell blocks. When we passed B, I thought to myself that we should check it out because B is the first letter of my name. Odd thought to have, but I went with it. The cell blocks formed the shape of a T, and in the middle of the T was a guard station with a ladder leading them to the second floor if they needed to go up there without having to interact with the inmates. This upstairs area connected to a hallway that led to a boiler room and a door with stairs leading down the side of the building. I walked up those stairs and past the boiler room, but I stopped dead in my tracks when I got to this hallway. I shined my phone flashlight into the hallway, and even though it was daytime outside, my light only went 1 inch into this area. I felt myself shiver, even though I live in the south and it's 90 degrees out. I asked out loud,
"If there's someone here with us, make yourself known."
I'm sure this was a mistake, but I didn't mean it negatively. I just felt compelled to say it. From this pitch black darkness, I hear a noise that sounded like something scurrying away, such as a small animal. I figure that's all it was that made me nervous when, all of a sudden, I hear footsteps, full on sprinting, directly at me. It sounded like whatever it was had massive feet and could run unnaturally fast. I ran out of the building and down the stairs with my girlfriend right in front of me. We both looked at each other and determined that, whatever it was, it did not want us here. We did end up walking around just a little more on other parts of the property, but we felt watched the entire time. As we left through the front door, we felt better, almost as if we were released from an unpleasant fog of energy. We had sage in the car and burned some, which also helped us feel better. I try not to think about it often, but I do wonder what we encountered. So I live in the country, northern Texas, and I go to this basically abandoned mall, except for 3 stores still open. One of the stores still open is an indoor playground for toddlers and kids. Well, you never would suspect anything haunting a playground, right? I wouldn't either, but this really happened to me a few days ago. So I brought my toddler to play in this indoor playground. The kind that has slides, jump houses, arcade games, that kind of place. We were the only ones in the store. We were going through this maze and going up this slide. All of a sudden, I hear 2 ladies yelling loud in the slide. It sounded like a really loud argument. So loud, I took my babies out of the slide. I then investigated around and absolutely no one was around. Then I went down the slide and there was a rattling right in back of me as I went down. It felt like it was following me, and I would stop in the middle of the slide to investigate, and it would continue to rattle, like it had a consciousness. I then heard another voice right behind me, loud. Turned round and no one was there. I didn't say any of this to my daughters, but my eldest, 3 years old, had started freaking out and said she felt like something was following her, and said she thinks something is there and it's mad. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just my imagination, so I put my fears to the side and really investigated the slides. I really tried to confront whatever was there. I don't know what is there, but from me and my daughter's experience, it's paranormal. Sometime this week I will bring my husband there and have him see for himself. He's super skeptical and doesn't believe in this stuff. So I'll give an update soon. So I am employed as a policeman, and I work the night shift in a tiny little town. The population here barely breaks 1,000. Needless to say, I know the town well enough to be able to tell when something is off. Near the center of town, there is an old school they used before they built the new elementary and high schools. The building is listed as a historical site, so the building can't be demolished, but due to asbestos, renovations would cost the town too much to be worth the work. This school sits within feet of the public library, and behind sits the town's fairground. It isn't an official fairground, but every year they have bull riding and shows for small children they put on in the summer. With all of those details out of the way, I will explain what happened. I noticed the back light to the library on, which isn't normal since it wasn't all night, and it doesn't have a motion light. So I parked on the north side of the old school grounds. I walked through the fence and had to pass the school to get to the library. I would stop every few feet and listen because the gravel was so loud. When I stopped the second or third time, I thought I heard a squeal in the school, like a squeaking door. And at first I didn't think anything of it, since I figured I was hearing things. The town just replaced all of the windows on this building, so I thought I wouldn't hear the inside. When I investigated the light and found all the doors locked, I was walking back around to my car. As I walked by the school, I again heard a noise in the building, and stopped and listened, and shined my light, noticing a basement window was broken out. So when I walked up to the window, I looked down and in, and didn't see anything. I kept walking and heard the squeal again. It reminded me of those bathroom doors in schools that the hinges always squealed really loud and echoed. When I came around the corner, I saw two cats roughhousing in the dirt. They stopped to watch me, and then both of them turned and looked at a door I couldn't see myself because it was around another corner. One hissed and they both bolted away from the school, which put me on edge. I know this school is absolutely not in use, nor are there any plans to use this school anytime soon. Also, the local kids and homeless don't come here ever. It is a landmark the city as a whole really admires, and hasn't ever been an issue with breaking and entering for a long time. So when I came around the corner, I saw the door and walked up to it to see what the cats had run from. I looked for other animals, but that didn't make sense, because they looked up as if someone was standing in the window of the door, not like they would if it were a raccoon or a dog that ran off without me seeing. When I looked in the window with my light, I could see a gigantic Raggedy Andy painted on the wall, and I assumed that this was the kindergarten section or something. And then I stepped back from the door, getting ready to leave, and I heard whistling. It wasn't really loud, but it was loud enough to make me stop. That little voice in the back of my head was talking now, and telling me I was just hearing things. But the dude who likes the dump of fear of the unknown told me to go back to the door. So I went back and listened again, and I know it was whistling, and not like the squeak of an animal or object from inside. It got louder when I came to the door again, and it had a tune, but I don't know how to describe it. So now, thinking someone is in the school, I went around and checked all the doors, including the second floor door that I had to climb the rusty metal stairs that were more like a death trap. When I couldn't find a way into the school, I checked it all over again, and when I left I couldn't figure out what it was. The whistling had stopped, and I even hung around outside for a few minutes without my light on, just watching, figuring if someone was inside, they would eventually need to use the light to get around or back out. But there was nothing after 20 or so minutes. So I got in my car, circled the block and parked down the way, with my lights off to watch for someone to come out at some point. But no one did, and there haven't been any lights inside. I know this story seems kind of boring compared to the others, but working nights gets you on edge. And for all the things I know I experienced before, this was in my top 5 bone-chilling moments while working. I wanted to debunk the noise and the cats, but I wouldn't even know where to start with it. I just can't explain what happened. I hope you enjoyed listening, and I hope to share more experiences in the future. Update. So tonight I finally mustered up the intestinal fortitude to go back. I tried to return around the same time that I went last time, and I didn't hear any whistling, but something that kind of spooked me was when I got close to the building, a bunch of dogs in the neighborhood started barking. I don't think it was related, but I don't have a way to debunk this either. It's not normal for all the neighborhood dogs to start barking at once, but I won't chalk it up to paranormal just yet. I checked all the doors again, and I even took a picture of the painted Raggedy Andy on the wall. The only other thing that was odd was when I was standing underneath the stairs looking in the window to take a picture of Andy on the wall, the metal stairs above my head were clanking slightly, like someone was walking on them. But before I could go investigate it, I got called away to go back and do some real work. If I ever get anything solid, I'll definitely post it. Thanks for listening to my story. It was kind of fun. So not too long ago, me and my friends, being 16 to 19, discovered an abandoned building extremely close to our local high school. It is only separated by a highly trafficked nature center, with trails from the high school end of it to the abandoned facility. So being in a science class years prior, where we navigated these trails every day, I was surprised to have never found it. After telling me about it at lunch, me and about 3 friends decided to go after school to the building, and I was surprised that it was in a huge property that held about 8 football fields worth of random church-type buildings that were separated by about 50 yards each and were pretty massive individually. The first one we navigated was in the way back. It was the most run down and also one of the largest. A back door was simply propped open with a brick, and once you entered, you were exposed to a very long, narrow, dark hallway with many doors opening up to it, and the smell of moldy drywall and dust. The wallpaper was creepily peeling off just about everywhere, and walking down the hallway, we noticed that some rooms were in a relatively 9 out of 10 condition, while others, the drywall between them had completely rotted away to leave a pile on the floor of disgusting brown and green rotting material, with the ceiling caving in. After we explored the entire building, we realized that it was completely symmetrical in some sense, and eerily, each room was labeled things like bedroom, dining hall, etc. We found rooms that seemed to used to have padding and heavy doors that we recognized to be little cell-type rooms for angry mental people, like calm-down rooms. After realizing this and reading an old note we found in the boiler room, we realized that this was an old mental facility. The boiler room had stairs leading down to a completely flooded basement, which was very creepy looking. We found a room that my friends had set up previously with about 8 chairs set up in a circle, and we came back a few days later with literally 8 people, and it was pretty lit. Being midday and feeling safe, until one of us had the idea to start scaring each other and separating from the group. Everyone kept doing this for about 20 minutes, sneaking away with a buddy or two to slam doors and jump scare the rest of the lot. However, we started to notice that we weren't alone. There was someone or something else in the building with us. Me and my friend Twig were off to sneak from the rest and scare them as usual, when we noticed feet from the other side of the door. We also saw the door rattle, like it had been kicked or punched, and saw the footsteps walk away from under it. Scared shitless, we ran back to the rest of the group, still in the chair room, and told them, but they didn't believe us, as everyone kept saying that they saw something, and we assumed it was bullshit, since everyone was trying to scare each other. Eventually, someone had the grand old idea for us to all congregate in this chair room and be completely silent and listen for noises. To our surprise, we all heard sounds from the other side of the building, echoing towards us. Furthermore, me and a friend, about 10 minutes prior, both threw chairs down the hall to make noise to scare everyone. When we looked back down the hall seconds later, we noticed that both the chairs went very far down the hall, about 30 feet. With all of this, we all dipped very quickly into our cars, left and never came back until about a week later, when we found all of the windows had been smashed, not by us, and the doors that were open were all boarded up and locked up. We think that the city is keeping these buildings locked up for a reason, or if they don't know, something is lurking in the moldy, despairing darkness. Good thing they did. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.